Today's daf yomi is Bava Basra Kuf Nun Vav Bava Basra 156, and we're going to start on 156a around 10 lines from the top. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, Bokin Kedushin V'Gerushin V'Chalutzin. Excuse me, V'Chalitza V'Yunin. Okay, so today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, Atzal for the Shuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael. So we had discussed that even though a person is an adult, they still can't sell their property until they're either 18 or 22 different positions, the property they inherit from their father. So the Gemara had said in that context, now the statement of Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel, that there are other things where even though you need to be an adult, we don't trust you that when you're 13 for a boy or 12 for a girl, we have to do an investigation to make sure that you're really physically an adult and you have the shtei cyrus, the two hair that's associated with being an adult. So kedushin, if a boy has to be an adult in order to marry a girl, so if he marries her, we don't just rely upon the fact that he turned 13. We also require him to have to check him to make sure he has two hairs. Gerushin for a divorce. Also, chalitza. We'll see what the chalitza means. Chalitza is the where she removes the shoe and spits on the floor in front of her brother-in-law. Amiyunin. This is a girl who's under the age of 12 who wants to reject the marriage that she was married off by her brother and her mother's. She has until the age of 12 to reject it. So let's say they want to see whether or not she's 12 or not. They have to inspect her. And now this is not directly related, but it's part of it. And to sell the assets of his father, he has to be 20. But given the Batkana or Kedushin, the Gemara has to have this question: well, how can you be married? How can you get divorced unless you're married? And since you have to check to make sure he's married, then with Gerusha Lamali, then why do we need to check her for divorce? Why do we need to check him for divorce? So the Gemara says in this context, there is a way you get married without a betrothal. You can get married as a minor. We're on 156a, 10 lines from the top. That if a woman falls to live her marriage with her minor brother, she's allowed to marry him. He's allowed to consummate the marriage even though he's not an adult. That if he's only 9 years old in his relationship with his yavam, he's able to effectuate the marriage. The Eino Singet Yigdal, but he still can't give the divorce until he grows older. What do we mean about chalitza? This excludes the position of Rabbi Yossi, because it says, Rabbi Yossi says, Ishkas of the parasha, that it says in order to do a chalitza, you need to be an adult. But for a woman, Isha ben Gadol ben Katana. But for a woman, you can even be a minor. Kamash Malan, the Makshinan Isha la Ish. So we see from here that you compare a woman to a man. The look Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi had said a woman could. So Rabbi Yossi said that a woman who's a minor is capable of doing the chalitza, but here we're saying that the chalitza, she also has to be an adult. She also has to be an adult. Well, miyunin, and what about miyun? Afukim Rabbi Yehuda. This excludes the position of Rabbi Yehuda, who states ad sheyarbe shachor. Now Rabbi Yehuda says not enough that she just has shtei thyros, but she also has to have even more of the area covered than just two hairs. Kamashma, the look Rabbi Yehuda. We don't rule like Rabbi Yehuda. We say just shtei cyrus is necessary to prove she's an adult and can no longer do miyun. So then the Gemara says, now how do we rule? And then we say, to sell the assets of the father, Ashia ben Esrim. until he's 20. Lafuke Mimanda Amar, to exclude the position of the one who states Ben Shmona Asrei, Ben Shmona Asrei. So there was a position that we saw of Rava in the name of Rav Nachman, and you could sell the assets to your father once you're 18, but this source says only once you're 20. The Hilchasa and the Halach in all these cases is Tochzman Kufneizman. The law in all these cases that we had a whole discussion from the past couple of days is Tochzman is like Kufneizman. Meaning to say, when you're 20, it's not when you're in your 20th year from after your 19th birthday, it's when you actually turn 20. And the law is like Gido Bar Menashe, who says that even if you're under the age of 20, if you understand how to do business, we're going to allow you to do the business and to sell the real estate, and for movables, even at the age of 6 and 7. So then the Gemara says, V'ilchasa Kamar Zutra, and the law is like Mar Zutra. And what did Mar Zutra say? Mar Zutra said that for movables, you could testify at the age of 13, even if you don't know about business, but for real estate, you can't testify until you're the age where you can buy it. And V'ilchasa Ka'amemar, and the law is like a Memar, who we said yesterday. He said that even though you can't sell the real estate, you could give it away as a gift. And the law is like Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel in all these 5 teachings that we just discussed, that you check the man for Kedushin and for divorce and for Chalitza. She also has to be an adult. And also at 20 years old. So now up to the next Mishnah. Now this next Mishnah basically rejects all that we've studied till now. Mishnah, we said that till now we've been saying a shlimera, a person who's sick, can sell without a formal kinyan, and can also sell without a formal kinyan, and can also sell, and also if he recovers, it's reversed. I mean, he can give it away without a formal kinyan, and if he recovers, it's reversed. But now our Mishnah says the position of Rebbe Lazar, Machalik Nechasav al Piv, somebody who thinks he's very sick and he just decides to give it away. He just decides to give it away without doing a kinyan. Rebbe Lazar Omer Echad Bari V'Echad Mesukan. So Rebbe Lazar says it doesn't matter if he's healthy. For sure he can't do it. But even if he thinks he's going to die, if it's real estate, niknim bekesef v'shtar chazaka. If it is real estate, it's acquired with the way you acquire real estate, which is money, contract, or proprietary act. But those things that do not have real estate movables, a niknel of the mashicha. They have to have a pulling of you towards them. So we see from here that Rebbe Lazar rejects everything we said until now. All these laws of Shlimurai says, I don't care about it. It's not relevant. We don't buy it. He rejects it. So Amrulo. So they said to him on top of 156b. They said to him, what about Maisa B'Iman Shal B'nei Barucha? What about Rochel? He had children, and their mother, Shaita Chola, she was sick. But Amra, and she said, Tenu Kvinasi Labiti. She said, give my brooch to my daughter, and the brooch was worth a lot of money. But the brooch was worth 12 mana, and she wanted to give it away. Umeisa, and she died, and she didn't do a formal kinyan. V'kimo estivara, and they upheld the words. So they said, Amrohan, B'nei Rochel tikbareim iman. He said to them, you bring me a proof from B'nei Rochel, their mothers should bury them, meaning to say they're terrible people. So the rabbis allowed the gift to go through because they didn't want it to go to the boys, they wanted it to go to the girl, because they were worthy to be buried. So they rejected Rebbe Lazar's ruling. So Tanya, Amrohan Rebbe Lazar Chachamim. So Rebbe Lazar says to the Chachamim, Ma'isa, the Moroni, Rebbe Lazar wants to prove that you need a formal kinyan. And he says, I'll prove it to you from the fact that there was an incident with a boy from Meron, Ushaya Yerushalayim, and he was in Jerusalem, and he had a lot of movables. Ubikesh and he wanted to give them away. Now he didn't just give them away by saying it, Amrlo, they said to him, Elam takana sheyikna gav karka. They said, no, if you want to give away your movables, and since all your property is in Meron and you can't actually give it to them, I'll tell you what you need to do. Buy a piece of property and then give them the property and then transfer the movables via the property. He bought a rock, Samach Yerushalayim near Jerusalem. Amar, he says, Tefono Pony, I'm giving the northern rock to this person, and I'm transferring with it by dint 100 sheep and 100 barrels. Uderomo, and the southern part of the rock is Loponi, so he said, I'm transferring it by the property. Umes, and then he died. The Kimu Chachamim asked Devarav, and the sages upheld his word. So we see from here that even though he died right away, the sages said that it's basically going to be a even though he died right away, the sages said that it's only valid because he did a kinyan to transfer it. So the Gemara says, so don't we see that it says Rebbe Lezer to the Rabbanon? So don't we see that in order to transfer something, even though he's about to die, you need to do it with the kinyan? The Gemara says, no, Misham Raya, you bring me a proof from there. Meironi Bari Haya, even though he just died, he was healthy. He thought he was healthy. He didn't realize he was sick. He was healthy, and then he happened to die right away. But he wasn't under the rule of a shchemera. So then the Gemara says, "Amrolen b'nei rochel tikvar an iman." So the rabbis tried to prove from the b'nei rochel that she could give it away, that the mother could give it away without a kinyan to disprove Rebbe Lezer. So Rebbe Lezer says, no, b'nei rochel, they were bad. They were bad. So the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, well, what was so bad about the Bnei Rochel? My time, why did Rebbe Lazar curse the Bnei Rochel? So the Gemara explains, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Mekayme Kotes and Mekarim Hayu, because they were upholding their thorns in the vineyard. So this is a violation of Klayim Bekarim. Klayim is the prohibition of a mixture. That you're not allowed to mix certain items. There are 5 different things in the Torah that says you're not allowed to mix. One is clothing, wool, and linen. 2, you can't mix the animals. You can't mate animals who are 2 different types of animals, and you can't work them together. So now we've seen 3. You're not allowed to plant 2 different plants together to mix them, and also you can't plant seeds in a vineyard. So that's the most severe. You can't have any benefit from it, even if you did that. So the Gemara says in this context that they were keeping their thorns in the vineyard, which was like planting the seeds in a vineyard, and therefore is a problem. Rebbe Lezer follows the reasoning that this is considered problematic. If you keep the thorns in the vineyard, Rebbe Lezer Omer Kadesh. Rebbe Lezer said it's prohibited for the violation of Kolayim. The Chachamim Omer Mul Kadesh. Chachamim say it's not the violation of Kolayim. Ela Davar Shakamo Makaiman. So he says the only reason why it's only Kolayim if people, typically speaking, want it in the field. So the Gemara says, Bishlama Karkom, it makes sense. Karkom is usually translated as saffron. But Chazi, Ela Kotzim, Chozi, what are they going to do with thorns? Why would Rebbe Lezer say in violation of Koyim? So I'm Rebbe Chanina, my time with Rebbe Lezer, what's the reason why Rebbe Lezer says this is Koyim? Shekeim Barvaya, Mekayim and Kotzim, Besados Ligmalayim. In Arabia, they would keep the thorns in their fields for the camels. So since they use it in Arabia, Rebbe Lezer said, therefore it's going to be considered problematic and it's going to be a violation of the prohibition of Kolayim. Okay, so then the Gemara says, we do like the coda here. Amar Rabbi Levi, Konan Kinyan Mishlimira Afilo B'Shabbos. So Rabbi Levi says we can do a Kinyan from a shlimera, kinyan's a formal transaction from this person who's very sick, even on Shabbos, and he allows you to do this kinyan. Even though generally speaking, we don't allow you to do a kinyan, in this case, we do it. And the Rashbam points out that over here, we're saying even in a situation where shlimera doesn't work, and even in a situation where shlimera works, meaning that even if you left some of the property over, we allow you to do, and so it's not a typical shlimera, we allow you to do it. And even if you didn't, in both cases where he didn't leave any property over, you don't need the kinyan, we still allow you to do the kinyan on Shabbos. Why? And we're not going to determine the position of Rebbe Lazar, who says, and he didn't say this because he's worried about Rebbe Lazar, says otherwise otherwise we wouldn't be able to make the transaction. But the reason is because the guy gets it in his mind he needs a kinyan. If we don't allow him to do the kinyan, he'll get so agitated. So for that reason, even though it's not necessary, then therefore for that reason we allow him to do a kinyan on Shabbos. Okay, we'll go on to the next Mishnah. Yes.
Certain types of opinion,
it's the person who's sick, so we allow him to do a kinyan that he needs to do, but he's not going to be writing. He's not writing.
And so it would be, is it just a movable object?
Well, it's for they didn't draw a distinction. B'chol matnosav doesn't draw a distinction. It doesn't. The Rashbam didn't draw a distinction. Here's what they say here. That the reason the Rashbam says it's kinyan sudar because that's the one that looks most like business. But the other forms of kinyanim, like pulling it to you or picking it up, that doesn't necessarily look like you're doing business. So therefore, for sure, it's permitted. And this is relevant, actually, because the question becomes, let's say somebody wants to give you a gift on Shabbos, are you allowed to get it? So since you can't do a kinyan, you're not supposed to take the gift on Shabbos. So then there's a whole question of how do you do a gift on Shabbos? Like you go to somebody's home, want to bring them a bottle of wine, etc. So what the ideal way to do it is to give to them before Shabbos, or if they can't do it, you can't give it to them before Shabbos. And you say, okay, I'm sharing it with you. I'm still keeping it. But let's say they don't want to use that bottle of wine. They want to wait. So then the best way to do it is you give it before Shabbos to somebody else. Say you acquire it on their behalf. Then you don't have a problem. You've already given it to them before Shabbos. They don't actually have to get it. Yeah, the Zacham Adam Shalom B'fanav. You can acquire. So that's actually the next Mishnah. You can acquire something on behalf of somebody else. So now the Mishnah says, next Mishnah, Rebbe Lazar Omer, B'Shabbos. No, I'm saying like, let's say you have it with your wife, you give it to your wife, and you say you acquire it on behalf of the friends we're going to. Rebbe Lazar says, B'Shabbos Tvarav Tayamin, Imnei She'en Yachol L'chtov. So now we're going to see a third position. If you're giving out your assets on Shabbos, then the sage is instituted that it works without a kinyan and without writing, because we don't want to get him agitated. And so therefore on Shabbos, we allow him to give it over without writing. Avalo b'chol. But during the week, since he can write, why will he get agitated? We allow him. We allow him to. We say write it down. So on Shabbos we say you don't need to do a kinyan, but during the week write it down. Talking and so comes along Rabbi Yeshua and says, "B'Shabbos Amru." No, if they allow it to work on Shabbos, Kal v'chomer b'chol. If they allow it to work on Shabbos, even though, first, and if on Shabbos his words are upheld, even though you can't say, well, since he's able to acquire it and to write it, even without it, it works. For sure during the week, it will work. So that's what Rabbi Yeshua says. B'Shabbos Amru Kal v'chomer b'chol. Means to say, if on Shabbos, where he wouldn't have been able to even acquire it at all, so meaning on Shabbos, since we can't say, well, since he could write it, we'll allow him to acquire without writing it, then during the week, it for sure should work. And the Rashbam says that this is relevant to the idea of kol haroy biwa ein biwa ma'akeves, meaning to say that this is a law from the flower offering in the temple, the mincha, that if the flower offering is so large, it's not good. You can't mix too much in one pot. It has to be less than a certain amount because it needs to be able to be mixed. Even though it doesn't, you don't have to mix the flour and the oil. It needs to be capable of being mixed properly. So too, says Rabbi Yeshua, it needs to be capable of having a kinyan. And on Shabbos, not even capable. So if we allow it on Shabbos, for sure we will allow it during the week. So the Gemara says, so now we see basically three positions about Shlimera. That the position of Rabbi Yeshua is that it works all the time. That was what we said for most of the chapter up until yesterday, up until the stop. Rabbi Lazar says it doesn't work at all. There's no such concept. And now we have Rabbi Eliezer who says it works on Shabbos, but not during the week. So the Gemara says Masnisin money. So who is our? Oh, excuse me. Then I skipped the second part of the Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer says we allow you to acquire something on behalf of a minor. Since the minor can't get it for himself, the money you give to him, the sages said that somebody else could accept it on his behalf, but not for an adult, because the adult could get it on his own. Whereas Rabbi Shua says, if they allowed the minor to get it, for sure the adult can get it. Same concept. So the Gemara says, Masnisin money. Who is our Mishnah like? Let me just stop the recording. We go on like a few more minutes.